So welcome everybody tonight to our webinar, Heal. And tonight we're going with the flow a little bit of what wants to come true. And I always sometimes I like to come in and I have a more of a set idea about what I want to talk about, and then other times just things that want to come true. I often feel like if I get out of the way, then we sometimes get a good conversation going. And uh like one of the things that was coming up for me today was I do a lot of work in the bioenergy about presence and about like being in presence, and especially for people to receive healing. One of the key factors of people being able to receive healing is that you have to be able to receive it, right? Like as a healer teacher, you can offer something to somebody, like you can offer healing to someone, but you can't force it or push it on them. You have to help bring them to a place of receptivity so that they can actually receive healing. And the reason I was kind of coming up in my thoughts today was just like what presence gives us is receptivity. Presence allows us to get out of the way. It opens us up to receptivity. And in terms of like the lack of receptivity is that I always share, like in my level 1 bioenergy healing, from the very first weekend of training that people do, one of the segments that we do is called stories. And I would say, like, people have stories about themselves. People have stories about how they are in the world, their identity, how they interact with other people, and and how we're perceived in the world. And there's sometimes ways in which we're reinforcing our old patterns over and over and over again through the same stories that we keep telling ourselves. Almost like normalizing the things that we don't want in our life. We normalize them by repeating them over and over. So um, like even somebody with illness, it's like they start to identify themselves as being that person with the illness. Or actually, someone said to me the other day that someone had said about them having depression, but the way they saw it was that they weren't depressed, but they had depression. And I love that because there's a separation between the depression and them, right? And that's really important when it comes to healing, because how you witness stuff, you're a witness of it. But as soon as you create an identity with it, it's like entanglement in quantum physics. You go into a relationship with it. And then within that relationship, you're entangled with it. So it's like you can start to normalize um, the way that you are around certain things. And you can even normalize, oh, well, people even say, oh, well, that's just how things are. And I see people who that, obviously my focus of work is always on healing, but I see how that like plays out for people in so many ways. But in terms of healing, like a common one that gets normalized is healing takes a long time. And you will have heard me, if you've listened to any of my webinars or been to any workshops or courses, you will always hear me say healing actually happens very quickly, right? Like it's getting ready to heal that takes a long time. So it's just like, but the healing itself, it's like change. Change happens quickly. When you make a change in your life, you generally make it pretty quickly. When you make decisions in your life, like decision moves energy, right? Like, so when we make a decision moves energy and we take action. So when we make decisions, things generally come quickly. So often I find is like that people are often not making decisions, which in a way is a decision, right? Like, so when you're not making a decision to be healthy, you could be making a decision to stay unhealthy, right? Like if you're not making a decision to even to eat healthy by default, you're making the decision to keep eating in the way that you've always eaten, and then you normalize that as, oh, well, that's just how I grew up, or that's just how my family eats, and monkey see, monkey do. And we normalize our food patterns, our exercise patterns, our relationship patterns, our financial patterns. Like we even normalize our finances, right? Like, oh, that's just how things are. But none of it is stuck in cement. It's just like when we perceive the world really through the identity, and especially through the physical body, we're in what's called like the 3D, and you've heard the 3D mentioned many times. It's the third dimension. So the physical body exists in the third dimension. All the physical stuff, all the tangible stuff that we touch and we see and we experience is very much that 3D reality. And so even like when it comes to healing and people are trying to heal a physical illness or a physical sickness in their body, they're often approaching it from a very 3D approach. Like, let's massage it, let's manipulate the spine, let's take a pharmaceutical and affect the chemical system. Well, the chemical system is still 3D. It's very physical. And so when we open up into the world of energy, and as I always say, it's a magical world, this magical world of energy. And when we open up into the magical world of energy, there is your physical body, absolutely, but it doesn't stop there. And that's the whole point, that there's so much more to us than just the physical body. Now, I might get a little bit abstract, but try to stay with me and I have a way of coming back in and making a point eventually. But like in terms of like we tend to think of the physical body as, like I said, we want to treat the physical body if we get sick, or pharmaceuticals focus very much on the chemical, which is the physical body. And what I'm saying is that there's so much more to us than just the physical. And deep down, we know that, right? Like, I'm not teaching you anything that you don't know. I always say, I'm just reminding people. I'm reminding people of the different levels of dimension that we exist in. We're multi-dimensional beings, and that third dimension, or that 3D, is just one expression of what we are. And in terms of the expression, our expression, it's more like the dense physical expression. So it's the consequence of what's happening on other levels. It's the effect. So when you hear in complementary healing, we often say cause and effect, cause and effect. So like if a person's eating really unhealthy, then the effects of that is different than the cause. Does that make sense? Right? Like, so the cause of eating unhealthy could be one thing, right? It's something that you've seen your family do, and then you pick up the same habits. That's the cause. And then the effects of eating unhealthy could lead your body to illness or sickness, right? Um, and so we've got the cause and we got the effect. And then we have things like, one of the most common things we treat in bioenergy is back pain. So we say, well, look, back pain is an effect. And then people say, yeah, but the cause is also physical. It's because I was lifting something heavy, or I'm sitting down at a computer for 12 hours and I'm, you know, like there's a physical reason why I was in a car crash and I hurt my back. And so we tend to think in terms of that 3D, right? We create these relationships between it happened on a physical level, it's showing up on a physical level, and then we try to treat it on a physical level. And what I look to show people through bioenergy healing is that that's one level, but there's other levels as well. There's the the thought field, which is the subconscious level of thought, which is more like the fourth dimension. So the fourth dimension is how we're accessing our body unconsciously. So it's like the unconscious level, but also communicating to the body. And then the more like the vibrational field like of emotions, that's also a layer in the energy field between the fourth and the fifth, where our feelings affect the physical body too. And so in terms of like, you've heard me maybe say terms like the biofield. Now when you think of bioenergy healing, what does bioenergy healing mean, or what does it relate to? Well, bioenergy healing is really a practice of techniques to bring the electromagnetic energy around the body into balance, to clear blockages out and to bring the body into balance. And the simple version of it, as I would say to people, is you've got your physical body, but it doesn't stop there. You also have an electromagnetic field out around your body. And you've got seven major energy points in your body that relate to the seven major glands in your body. And then those 7 points of greater electromagnetic energy in more Sanskrit is the seven chakras. And then each of the chakras create a force field around the body, which is the aura. So now you've got seven major chakras that physically relate to the seven major glands. And so it goes from energy through the glands and become the physical body. So that's the process of it coming into that physical. But now back out into the biofield. The biofield is the chakras and the aura, the electromagnetic field. And then you could also say that your thoughts are in that electrical field. So your thoughts are electrical. When you think, the very nature of thinking is you release electrical charges in your body. And then we could even say that it doesn't stop there though, but your emotions are the magnetic field. So as we feel, as we uh, as we emote, you could say, as we emote, we create magnetism, right? And so I'm sure everybody has experienced sometimes you have some good thoughts and some negative thoughts, but not necessarily too much happens. Like you can have a negative thought that your house is going to fall down, but it doesn't fall down, right? Like so within itself, thought only being electrical doesn't really always bring about a big change, right? But when thought is linked with emotion, now the electrical and the magnetic come together, and then that starts to imprint the biofield. And so thought and feeling put together, which is really what happens when you think of trauma, right? When someone has a trauma, they lock up their emotional body. They go into like more like severe emotional state, and that can get locked into their body. And sometimes you'll even say like it's like a sickness that a person has is also like a year that the person went through a trauma. And the trauma doesn't have to be something when we think of something traumatic, it doesn't have to be like something like that's super traumatic, right? Like, but like the loss of a loved one is a trauma. The ending of a relationship is a trauma. The losing a job can be a trauma. Like in terms of that, you can generate a high emotion and you can lock up your energy field. You can lock down the flow and the movement of energy, which the chakras are circulating an expression. And the chakras are circulating energy out into all the organs and tissues and cells and blood and bones. And it's feeding the whole body and keeping the whole body functioning. But sometimes when we have these high emotional states of stress or trauma, will close down the body in different areas. And so, of course, healers, practitioners are always looking to identify where is the person closing down, right? And then in those areas that we're closing down, then usually illness and sickness over time will show up in the corresponding areas. And the quick version of that is like, you could be, thinking someone's a pain in the neck, but it doesn't really do anything, right? But you could be over a period of time, you also might start to feel that they're a pain in the neck, So now it's not that you just think someone's a pain in the neck, but you actually feel it. You're like, when they come into your presence, you're like, oh, this person's a right pain in the neck. And then what happens is your body starts to experience a pain in the neck. So, but it's not being caused at the level of the body. It's being caused at the more etheric level, which is the thought and the feeling. It's happening at another level. And then when those two, the electric and the magnetic, come together and they're charged, then the body experiences it as a charge of energy that gets held in the body, right? And so a lot of the charges that we hold in the body, they're often not even from, as crazy as this sounds, they're not even from the experiences that we're having now. They're often from past experiences. So we loop our current experiences back around to past experiences. So we're looping ourselves around. Um, and we often sometimes, like, energetically, we even draw people and experiences to us to activate our pain body or our wound body or our trauma body so that we have an opportunity to heal it. Oh, oh, boom. Because I know sometimes when people feel like, why the hell is this happening again? Has anyone ever said that to themselves? Right? Some hands going up there. But like, when we think that, like, why the hell is this happening again? Am I not learning my lesson? I thought I dealt with it. The amount of people that say to me, Michael, I thought I dealt with this in the past. I did, all of these different things, and I thought I dealt with this. And I said, look, if it's coming around again, it's just like it's giving you an opportunity to go deeper. It's giving you an opportunity to heal it at an even deeper level. And I'm inclined to think that I don't think that things stop coming around. I think it's like seasons, right? The seasons don't stop, right? The tides don't stop. The day and night doesn't stop. It's like, because the very nature of life is movement and cycles. Like, if you think of, like, everything is like energy, uh frequency, right? So everything is like energy, frequency, and resonance, right? They're the kind of things, right? But in terms of, like, how does life kind of function, life functions in waves and rhythms and patterns and cycles. So life is always unfolding in waves and rhythms and patterns and cycles. Does that make sense? Right? So then cycles always repeat, right? So it's not, I don't think we should get frustrated at the fact that cycles repeat. Personally, I kind of like that cycles repeat. I like that, no matter how busy your day is, that nighttime comes around again. Like, it's good that it comes around, right? Like, and it's nice to have the night to sleep in, right? Like, it's a little harder to sleep. Like, if there was only light, and it's a lot harder to sleep. So the dark is good too. It's all about integration, light and darkness. The darkness has its benefits. We might sleep better, right? But in terms of like, it's not that things repeat is the problem. It's that we think they should be different than what they are, or that we should be different than what we are. And I think, like, when people do the work, things are different when things come around again. But if you're not doing the work and you're reacting to something that comes around in the way that you previously reacted, well, how could it be any other way? Like, if you're not taking the time to do your healing, if you're not taking the opportunity to work through your patterns and conditioning and programming, then you're destined to keep repeating it, right? Like, that's why people go through the same patterns over and over again. Like I said, um, it's not that patterns don't repeat, but we repeat the same patterns as well. So it's like, opportunities come around again and again for us to release our wounds, for us to let go, for us to do the work. And if we're open and willing to look beyond just the physical, beyond just the pain, beyond the, like, where is it coming from? Where's the cause of this? Like, um, like even a good question is, why am I normalizing this thing in my life that I don't want? Oh, 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 that's the gold right there. Why am I normalizing this thing in my life that I don't want? And if you can answer that, you're going to see where the source of it is coming from, right? Like, because, like, well, that's the patterns right there. That's why the patterns are repeating, because there's a certain amount of you that is accepting the and the normal, accepting and normalizing the very thing that you say that you don't want, right? So in terms of opening up to this, like the more like the fourth and the fifth dimension, opening up to the thought field and the magnetic field, which is the emotion, and doing the work on the other levels of our existence. When we start to open up to the biofield, we're starting to tap into the causal plane, right? So we start to tune into the causal plane. And if we can do the work at the causal level, then the effects start to change, right? So I think I shared this story before, but I think it's relevant. It's like this one girl was coming in for sessions, and she said, Michael, I keep can you help me with relationships? And I said, well, what's the problem with the relationships? And she said, well, I keep meeting creeps, and I'm like, okay, like how many creeps have you met? And she's like, oh, like the last four men in my life have been creeps. And that's a pretty, like, if you understand that your thoughts and your feelings are programming your body, your actions, your experiences all the time, then that's quite a powerful statement to be putting out there, as well as to be repeating like and almost like normalizing, right? Like I keep meeting creeps is very much normalizing, keep meeting the creeps. And I would say something like, well, what kind of person would you like to meet? And in my mind, I'm thinking like, that's a beautiful, high quality question, like what kind of person would you like to meet? Because as soon as the mind starts to go there and access the answer to that, that's what you're going to create next. It's my friends, it's like a photocopy machine to understand intention. So Jenny was asking earlier about intention. To understand intention, it's like intention is a photocopy machine. Whatever you give your attention to, your energy goes, right? So everything you want and everything you don't want, if you're sending your energy to it, is magnetic. So like you might have more of a charge about the things that you don't want than the things that you do want. So a person who has an energetic charge that says, I don't want to eat junk food, I don't want to eat junk food, and they're emotionally charged around that, what are they going to go and do at lunchtime? Right? They're going to go eat junk food, even though they don't want to, but they're more charged about not eating junk food than they are charged about eating healthy, right? They've normalized the fight against junk food. It's all about not eating junk food, not eating junk food. And that is their language. That's what is in the imagery, in the electromagnetic field, and that's what is reoccurring back in. So intention is like a photocopy machine. The words that we use create images in the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind, does anybody know, like on every photocopy machine, you have a little green button. And when you press the green button, it photocopies the page that's in the scanner, right? So every time we speak, we're pressing that green button. We're bringing our creations forward. So life is a reflection of our creations, right? And so we're bringing those creations forward with the way that we think, the way that we speak. It's a creative process. It's the creative juices of the universe. And we speak existence into being. It's like, see, existence has always been there. It didn't appear out of nowhere, but it's always changing form and shape, right? We'll come back to that in just a second. But here we have like this lady that was saying about like, I don't want to meet any more creeps. And I said, well, you know, what kind of guy would you like to meet? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And she thinks about it for a moment and she says, well, just as long as he's not a creep, you know. And I'm like, look, that's still like, once you understand the photocopy machine, you can't be using that imagery and then expect to get a different, like, if you press the green button, you're not going to get a different picture than what's in the photocopy machine. It doesn't work that way, right? So this is the kind of thing where people often think of like manifestation and the things that you're bringing into your life, whether it's your relationships or your finances or your work or indeed your health, right? Like it's not magically appearing or disappearing out of nowhere. It's going through a process of creation. And when you understand the process, it's like, oh, that's why the person got sick. That's why the person is ill. It's not a punishment in any way. It's just like a misusing of the system, right? And so sorry, just adding somebody in here. So what I just try to do is just to help people understand the system so that you can influence your health in a better way. And as you learn it for your health, of course, it applies to everything from your finances to your relationships to your work, because it's all the same energy. One of the big things that I think why people normalize, be it illness or being broke or having bad relationships or whatever it might be, I think that when you get deep enough down in the healing work, I think that, obviously I've been doing this for over 30 years and I've worked with thousands of people in multiple countries. And what I found, and I'm just sharing it with you straight out, is what I found is the biggest thing for everybody is this lack of self-love, this lack of self-worth, right? And when people have this lack of self-love, lack of self-worth, then you're going to normalize the equivalent energy to match that. Does that make sense? So like say for instance, someone has a lack of self-worth and then they get into a relationship and they meet this partner and the partner is amazing. Well, now we'll say that their energy is vibrating here and they meet this person who's vibrating here. The only way that they can come back into balance is either they raise their energy to meet the other person, and if they don't, if they stay here and the person's here, either the person lowers their energy to meet them, or else what they'll do is they'll reject them out of their field. They literally will reject the person out of their biofield. They're so you know the way like with magnets, you know how magnets attract, and we often talk about magnets attract, but when you reverse them, what do? They repel, right? So we have the ability to repel out things out of our life that we're not in harmony with, right? And you may have seen that in different things in your life. Like even with finances is a big one for people. A person could have a lump sum of money come in and be like, this is great, a big lump sum of money. And what will they do? They will repel that money out of their life, like a fishing net full of holes. It'll just run through them and they lose it. Why? Because people will always come back to their resonance, the vibration that they are uh, comfortable with, that they have normalized. even though they say they don't want it, even though they say, hey, I want this and I want that, even though they might feel like they want more than what they have, but even if they get those things, they'll usually reject it in one way or another. Magnetically, like I said, they'll push it away from themselves because of I think it always comes down, no matter what country you're working in, no matter who you're working with, I think it all comes back to love or lack thereof, a lack of love, right? And so then in healing, healing is always about integration, right? Like that's really like if you can sum up healing, healing is about integration. So what is it that you're integrating? You're integrating love. You're returning love to the areas of your beingness where love has been lost. Right? That's why I say we all deserve more love, not less, right? Because there's areas of your body where you have stopped loving yourself. There's wounds that you have, which we call your pain body. So there's areas where you hold your pain, right? And that could be shame, or that could be blame, or that could be guilt, or that could be fear, or that could be regret. I think regret is a big one. People can have regrets. And where you're holding that regret, love is suppressed. Oh, boom, boom, fireworks. You know, where you're holding blame in your body, love is suppressed. Love is rejected. Now, love is always there, folks, right? Like the present moment is always here. It's not going anywhere. Peace is always here, right? Like, it's not going anywhere. It's always here. So in healing, this is why I say like your capacity to receive is what the present moment is about. Your capacity to receive is what healing is about. What is it that you're receiving? Love. And what does that mean? Well, that just simply means integration. So one of the things I put out at the beginning of this year was I think that this year, 2024, in our life of uh of being on planet Earth, I think that 2024 is a lot about integration. It's a time for us really to integrate the things that we say that we know, but we're not embodying, right? And the way I feel it or experience that is that I feel like energy is being amplified. Like I could say, the world is quite polarized. Energy is amplified, and so if you're not integrating the parts of yourself that you've rejected, those parts are getting louder and they're making more noise and they're becoming more uncomfortable. And I think that this is the kind of like this is the process of spiritual evolution where we're being given the opportunity to do the work on ourselves. We're being given the opportunity to re-experience over and over the unhealed parts of ourselves. Oh, right. Oh, so when you say, why is this happening to me again? Well, that's the victim, right? You're being gifted. You're being gifted the opportunity to heal the parts of yourself that are wounded, that's in pain, and that's suffering, right? Because, I think like life can be difficult, but suffering is optional, right? Like there's no doubt like life is hard, folks, right? Like life is hard, but life being hard isn't necessary for us to suffer. It's for us to grow. It's for us to see what we're made of. It's for us to embody the highest version of ourselves that we're able to bring forth. Okay, so I'm going somewhere with this conversation. At least I hope so. I'm winging it. but I'm going somewhere. And like I said, I feel like it wants to come true. And what wants to come true is like this pattern of like not feeling good enough. I think it's a deep rooted wound that everybody carries, a deeply rooted wound, and it gets expressed in different ways, or it gets talked about in different ways. But I think it all comes back to the same thing of like it's a lack of love, right? Like lack of self-love. So this wound, like the people, like as a society, and I've spoken about this before, but I just want to reiterate it. Our society has a way of saying like, if you achieve and you accomplish, then you're good enough, right? Like if you get the accolades and if you give other people what they want, if everybody's happy with, then you'll be happy. And we just know, we know deep down that that's not true. We know that, you know, yes, it's nice to buy stuff and it's nice to have stuff, but it makes you happy temporarily, but it doesn't give you any sense of true fulfillment, right? It's definitely nicer um to to like some people say, well, money brings its own problems, and I would say, well, it's nicer to have those problems than your problems without money. But in terms of like, we know deep down like that no matter how much money you have, no matter how good your job is, no matter how amazing your relationship, your kids and all of that is, that a person can have all of the stuff and all of the connections and all the stuff that they want, but they can be still deeply unhappy. They can still be deeply sad, deeply depressed. And that's what I found over the years is like, no matter how successful people have been who come for sessions, it has very little relevance on their health. So there's something more than what's happening in the 3D. There's something more than this, like, than this plane of effect, right? So the stuff is just an effect, right? You know, like all the physical and tangible things that we get are just effects. So if they make us happy temporarily, but they're not maintaining or sustaining a better quality of life, then we have to again come back to the causal plane. We have to move away now just from that 3D third dimension, and we have to start shifting up into the fourth dimension, which is that the unconsciousness, the things that we're not aware of, and the fifth dimension, that higher um, state of beingness where we're not so much doing, but we're more like being. And so in terms of like healing, as I have seen it over the years, is that healing is really bringing people back into their beingness rather than doingness. And again, that's not necessarily a new concept. We call ourselves human beings, not human doings, right? Like we're, I'm sure everybody here has used that at some point, right? I'm a human being, not a human doing, right? So, we know that stuff intellectually, but have we integrated that? And I think in terms of like, how can we like be here and know deep within our hearts that we are enough? Like, how can we really integrate that we are enough? And again, there's always this sense of like, after I accomplish this, after I do this, after I get this, then I'll be enough. And again, I deeply say we know that not to be true. you know so again, it's not on that physical level, it's at a deeper level. And so as we open up or explore that deeper level, I think it's very existence itself is where the answer lies. So um if you were to Google or ask Siri, what's the chances of being born? And what's the odds of you being born, right? And Siri or Google will tell you it's 1 in 400 trillion. And you can check it yourself, right? 1 in 400 trillion. That's the odds of you being born. So here's when I kind of like think of that. I think of like, obviously when people say life is very special and life is very magical, and the odds of that, like just existing, just being alive is pretty incredible odds, right? Like incredible, multiple lottery wins, one after the other. Like the chances of you 1 in 400 trillion, they're not odds you'd be buying a lottery ticket on, right? Like it's so. I guess what I'm saying is it's fate that you are here. It's not by chance. Nature nature doesn't do things by chance. Nature, there's an intelligence that moves through nature. There's an intelligence that organizes and orchestrates life. And your very existence has that intelligence built into it. And so the very fact, and it is a fact, it's not like hearsay, I think Kashi exists, I'm not sure. Well, we know she's here, but your very existence is, I feel, is evidence that you are enough. You are enough by your very existence. Now, we go a step further and you say, like, well, what if you cease to exist? And then one would have to say, well, can you cease to exist? Can you cease to exist? And if we take Einstein, right, like one of the most famous scientists and one of the most famous equations, um, like energy equals mass times the speed of light, right? So energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only change from one state into another, right? So in terms of us as our existence, our physical form is very much that third dimensional expression. And our emotions and our thoughts are that fourth and fifth dimensional expression. And so we're expressing ourselves on multi-dimensional levels. But when we die, whether we're born or whether we die, we don't begin to exist. We've always existed, but in a different form. So we change form to come into the physical birth, and we change form when we leave the physical body. So we come into the third dimension, we leave the third dimension, and yet at the same time that we come into, you could say, I would say more like expression rather than existence, right? So like one of the ways that I kind of shared this in a kind of way with my students and this is just like basic bioenergy, level 1 bioenergy, right? Like law of attraction, basic bioenergy. It's like electricity. Electricity is running through your house. It's behind your sockets and it exists. It exists as a potential energy. But if you don't plug in anything into your sockets, it's not expressing itself, but it still exists as a potential, right? Now you plug in a heater, you plug in a TV, or you plug in a fridge, or you plug in your computer, and then that electricity expresses itself as a potential, right? Like it expresses it, that potential, sorry, expresses itself. So before it's expressed, it's like a wave. The electrons exist as a wave, and then when they're being expressed, they express themselves as a particle, right? So your physical body is like it's waves of energy expressing themselves as particles. right? So you're expressing yourself as you're this physical person here with this, like this body, this age, this persona. Even if you have illness or sickness, you have certain organs that are expressing themselves, and you're channeling your existence into your body and expressing it out in this way, in this particular way. And that's why, like someone who gets migraines all the time, you're this being expressing yourself as the migraines. Someone else has diabetes, they're that being expressing themselves as the diabetes. Someone else has a knee problem ongoing, they're that being expressing themselves with the knee problem. So the expression is not the potential, but it is the potential. The potential is expressing itself, but the existence is beyond the particle. So the particle is just the expression of the wave, but it's not the wave itself as such. So in the same way, we're these, like on an existence level, we're these powerful, beautiful, multi-dimensional spiritual beings. Woo, woo. Soak that in, folks. Soak that. Oh, the good vibes. And we know it. The reason you're laughing and smiling is because you know it. It's like, you know why you're laughing? Because when I say that to you, you know that that resonates as truth. But look at all the feckin' stories we tell ourselves. I'm not good enough. Look at all the ways that we normalize, like being ill or being sick or not having enough or not being good enough or not feeling enough, or, we normalize all of that crap, right? And so, unless we don't, oh, boom, out of the ballpark, folks, out of the ballpark. So, like somebody asked a question earlier to bring in, and so I'm going to bring that in now. So, like when we're interacting, even when we're interacting with other people, like the conversations that we have, like if you keep meeting the same people and you guys keep talking about the same stuff and you keep putting the same images in the photocopy machine, well, then you're going to get the same printout and the same effect, right? If you want different experiences in your life, you got to put a different input in to get a different output out, right? And so when people don't understand this, when people live in that, that's why when we're in this kind of work and we talk about living in the 3D, the 3D dimension, it's that you're thinking that the 3D is the causal plane. And you're thinking that if I change things on a physical level, then my life will get better. And that is the biggest load of bullshit ever, because it doesn't work. It has never worked and it never will work. And so we have to come to the etheric level, and we have to understand that that's where the causal effect is. And when we start to work at that level of our existence, right? Because we're always existing, but like we're not always existing just at a physical level. We're also existing at a thought and an emotional level. And we all know that your emotions have just as much a powerful impact on your life than a physical experience that you have, right? Like someone could punch you in the arm and you could feel that, depending upon how hard they hit you, you might, maybe you feel it for a few minutes, or maybe you feel it for a day, or maybe you feel it for a few days if they hit you hard enough, right? But that's physical, but on an emotional level, it may be the fact that they hit you, you hold that for 20 years, like the emotions can play a huge role in, like even in whether the body heals or not. Like if you get offended by someone like doing something on you that you didn't feel was right, you'll prevent your body from healing. You'll literally on at a level at which you're not even aware of, you will shut your body down from healing. Why? Because if you're holding on to that emotion of like they did me wrong, right? Well, in order for you to continue to keep that in existence, you also then have to keep the pain. Because if the pain leaves you, then maybe it doesn't exist, right? So you hold on to things in existence in order, like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So in terms of healing, healing is really about bringing us back to the biofield, bringing us back to the etheric level, bringing us back to the causal plane and saying, hey, where are these things coming from? The, where, like, even you can even take this same approach, not just to help people recover from illness and to help people recover from sickness, but you can take that same approach and apply it to spiritual awakening, right? Because it's all like truth is the same stuff, no matter what expression it goes into, right? Like, so the process of that awakening is that if you can start to unravel the causal plane and you start to see yourself as like that you exist be not just as a physical body, but you exist at another level that is expressing itself as a physical body, then you become less attached to the illness. You become less attached to the sickness. And then at that level of causal, you can start to redirect where the waves of energy go. So the waves are always becoming particles. So the waves of energy, they exist as a potential that when they come in and express themselves as a physical body, they're taking form and shape based on the filter of your perception, right? So when we start to get back to the causal level, which is why, my friends, intention is so important. But not like intention is such a big subject, and it's not like easily dismissed. It's like it's not just like what you're saying to yourself during the day. The problem with what you're saying to yourself during the day is that during the day your defense mechanism is up. And so you're not really getting into your subconscious too deeply, right? Like you're saying your intentions and you're saying the things that you want, but unless your protective mechanism like comes down, your vulnerability comes up, which is an open heart chakra. That's why we work on the heart chakra very quickly in the session to get the person's energy open. Because when the energy opens and the defense mechanism comes down and the pain body opens up, then you're communicating then to the on the etheric level, on the energy level at which change takes place. Is this making sense? Is this some good stuff? Beautiful. I told you if we get out of the way, the good stuff will come true. Um, so in terms of like, I often think in terms of like manifestation. Manifestation is about starting at the etheric level and then bringing it down through the chakras into the 3D, into the physical world. So it's like you think and you feel at this level of causal plane, and then you bring it into existence. There's a process of like bringing it down to the chakras that brings it into existence. But then the reverse is also true. You can take something that is in physical form and you can bring the energy of it up through the chakras and take it out of existence. So that's what happens when you're doing healing on somebody and a tumor disappears. You've taken it, you've taken the energy of it and you've changed the energy of it up through the chakras. So you've changed the vibration of it 7 times by the time it goes up through the chakras. And you've changed the energy and the frequency of it. So it still exists, but now it exists in a different form. And so what is hard on solid, like in one way, can become more like tangible and fluid and disappear in another way. And I kind of like another kind of idea of that would be if you think of an ice cube can be like an ice cube can be solid, but you change the temperature, it's water, it's more liquid. You change the temperature again, and it's more like vapor, it's a gas. So it's the same thing, like it still exists even though the temperature changes it, but it exists in a different form. So human beings, we are those human beings, not human doings. So us as human beings, or let's even go so far to say that we're spiritual beings, you know, we're beautiful, powerful, magical spiritual beings made up of love, stardust, absolute stardust, existing beyond time and space, existing for millennia, expressing yourselves. Who knows? Maybe expressed yourself as an alien on a planet one time, or a tree on another planet, or now you're a human on Earth. It's like maybe you've had multiple expressions over billions of years. You've always been, right? You've always existed, but just in different forms. And we keep changing forms. And I think like healing is helping us understand that we become so attached to our identity and our stories that we feckin' believe what we've told ourselves about our limitations. So now, like that's why I say when a person says, I'm depressed, it's like they've now identified with that so much so that they're existing and expressing themselves through that filter of depression. And so as we start to detach, like, and come back into that etheric, that causal plane, you start to become less attached to the illness or sickness. And here's the magical thing. When people start to come back into their field, into their energy, and they become less attached to the identity, which is the ego, right? Boom. The ego is the identity. And what's the ego? It's the wounds, it's the trauma, it's the experiences that emotion got locked in your body, right? And so when we heal those wounds, what you're healing is your ego. You're healing the identities that you've created. You're healing the identities that you've normalized. Well, you can't say that to me. Do you know what I've been through? I've been abused. So you can't say that to me. Like even if someone had cancer and you're saying something to them and they say, well, you can't say that to me. I have cancer. I mean, they basically have won the conversation. You're not coming back from that, right? Like anything you say after that, like you can't say that to me. I've been abused. What are you going to do? You're going to apologize, right? They're going to normalize why they are the way they are, and they're going to win. Why are they going to win? Because you can only offer people a solution, but it's up to them whether you offer someone a gift, but it's up to them whether they take it or not, right? There's an old saying, you offer the gift, and if the person doesn't take the gift, to whom does the gift return? you know so it's like you can't force things onto other people, but you can make it available to them. You can show them, like, and I think that's, for me, healing is more than just getting rid of physical pain. I think that it's helping people get out of emotional pain as well really ends the suffering, getting out of emotional wounding and trauma and the ego identity, right? Like as we start to unravel that and we start to heal that, then I think that the natural state of the being in presence is freedom, is peace, is love, right? It's not that, the healer is going around putting peace in people and love in people, and, but it's simply if we get the blocks out of the way, you return to your natural state, right? And then what is that natural state? Well, we could say it's peace, it's bliss, but it's more than that. It's existence itself. It's it's the very nature of what we are, nature. We are nature herself, existing in this world and always existing, expressing ourselves. And the question I asked, I think, was like, I think I did like this alive last week, and I just said, like, what version of you are you playing? Right? Like, because there's you exist as multiple versions of yourself, and what version of you are you photocopying into existence? What version are you playing the highest version of yourself, or are you playing the victim version of yourself? There's it's like an actor on a stage, right? Like you hire yourself into a role, you give yourself a role, you play the role, and you become the role. And then you think that you are the role because you're playing the role, but it's like, it's just an expression, it's not the potential. You are the potential, not, you're also the expression of the potential, but you're also not limited to that. That's the whole point. So bringing that all together as we finish up. And I know we've gone a little over time, but don't worry, no charges will be sent to you. So let's bring it all back together then. It's like the very fact that you exist means that you are enough. Oh, take that in. The very fact that you exist, because something that exists, and non-existence cannot exist. Like, if it exists, it exists. You can't not exist, right? Non-existence doesn't exist. Oh, I'm going somewhere deep with that, right? Non-existence can't exist, right? It's not a thing, right? And so therefore you are here, you exist, you know. And so I think, like, healing is just like, again, it's reminding us, like, when people have a capacity to step out of illness and sickness. It doesn't matter if you've been sick for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. It doesn't matter what stories you've been telling yourself. It doesn't matter how long you have felt that you're not good enough. Doesn't matter. None of that matters, right? It's as you unravel and take all of that out of the way, your very nature is presence, is enough, is bliss, is peace, is joy, you know. And although I'm sharing that with you, it's like there's a deep knowing in you of what I'm saying here. There's a deep knowing. And no matter how much life has tried to cover you up, no matter how much life has tried to strip you away, there's a deep knowing inside you that you are enough. And the stories that you tell yourself that you're not enough, they're laughable at that level of existence. They're laughable. But, and I say but deliberately, but there's nobody judging you. Because if the universe or existence or God, whatever name you want to give it, if if we accept that the universe, God, existence is non-judgmental, then it's not judging us. So who's judging you? And my friends, that would be you. Until you're not, you know. Thank you for tuning in today. Really beautiful to have you all on. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please check the link in my bio for upcoming events. Um, please give a like and subscribe, or comment, give me some feedback. Always nice to share these insights with you. And check out my website at daltonsbio.com. That's DaltonsBio.com.